Have you ever heard of a prayer that's only 2 verses long, but managed to spark a global sensation and a massive debate? Well, today we're talking about the prayer of Jabez. It forces us to ask a really big question. When we pray, what are we actually asking for? Let's dive in.
So this is it. This is the prayer. It's tucked away in what's honestly a pretty dense part of the Hebrew Bible, a long list of genealogies, and at first glance it seems simple enough, right? A guy asking you for blessings, for more influence, and for protection. But the debate over what "bless me" and "enlarge my territory" really mean, well, that's where our story begins.
So how in the world did this super obscure prayer become a household name? It all kicked off with an interpretation that was, incredibly straightforward and really appealing to a lot of people.
This little book, it's tiny, by a pastor named Bruce Wilkinson, just exploded. It completely took the world by storm. It yanked this 2-verse prayer from total obscurity, and suddenly the name Jabez was everywhere. The promise? That this prayer was a key to unlocking some kind of extraordinary favor in your life.
The book's central message was powerful and simple. God has this huge stash of blessings just waiting for you, but they're not on autopilot. You have to step up and specifically ask for them. The idea is that prayer is literally the key that unlocks a heavenly warehouse full of good things.
And to really hammer this point home, the book tells this really memorable story about a guy named John Jones. The story goes, he passes away, he gets to heaven, and he's getting the grand tour. So on this tour, they come to this enormous warehouse. No windows, just one door. And inside, there are shelves stretching as far as the eye can see, and they're all stacked with boxes. Every single box has a name on it. And of course, John Jones finds the box with his name written right on it. His guide is a little hesitant, kind of suggesting, hey, maybe you don't want to open that, but, curiosity takes over. He has to know. He lifts the lid to see what God had set aside for him. So, what do you think he found inside?
And here's the punchline of the whole story, the thing that perfectly captures the book's message. The box was just overflowing with incredible blessings, amazing opportunities, resources, moments of grace. All of them went totally unclaimed. And the reason? So simple. He never asked. They were there for him, but he lived his entire life without ever receiving them.
Now, as you can imagine, this ask and you shall receive message was a massive hit. But it also kicked up a huge storm of criticism, and that led to a pretty serious theological debate. Critics started pushing back, hard. They argued that this whole approach kind of turns prayer into a cosmic vending machine. It got labeled as a type of prosperity gospel, this idea that faith is basically a tool to get more wealth, better health, and personal success. The big concern was that it shifts the focus from a life of service to, well, a life of just getting more stuff. In the Korean Christian community, there's actually a specific word for this concept. Ki-bok shinong. It describes a faith that's mostly transactional. It's all about what you can get from God. Things like worldly success or material comfort, instead of being about spiritual growth or fulfilling a purpose that's bigger than yourself.
This slide really just lays out the central conflict, doesn't it? On one hand, you have praying for our wishes, which, if we're honest, are often about our own comfort and personal desires. But on the other hand, you have praying for the ability to fulfill a mission, a purpose that's given to us, something bigger than us. It's really the difference between asking, what can I get, versus asking, what am I called to do?
And this brings us right to the heart of our whole explainer today. If a prayer that's only focused on getting more stuff is, let's say, a little problematic, then what's the alternative? What could the prayer of Jabez actually mean?
To figure that out, this new interpretation says we need to stop looking so hard at the prayer itself and start looking closer at the man who prayed it. And that's where we find this fascinating clue that's been hiding in plain sight this whole time.
So, remember how I said the prayer is in the book of 1 Chronicles? Well, that book kicks off with 9 straight chapters of genealogies. It's just a massive list of who was the son of whom and so on. But when the text gets to Jabez, something is really off. He literally just appears out of nowhere. No father's name, no mother's name. Now think about that. In a text where the entire point is to trace your family tree, to prove your lineage, to show you belong, Jabez shows up like he has no roots at all. That's a massive red flag. Why would they hide his origin?
Well, the theory goes that Jabez was probably an outsider, just like a few other famous figures in these genealogies. Think about Rahab, a woman from the enemy city of Jericho, or Ruth from the foreign land of Moab. Both were immigrants who were welcomed into the community and became these hugely important figures. They even show up in the family line of kings.
The thinking is, Jabez was probably a foreigner too, who was adopted into the tribe of Judah. And that one piece of context, it completely changes the game. If Jabez is an outsider, an immigrant trying to find his place in a new land, his prayer suddenly sounds completely different.
So let's look at that famous line again, enlarge my territory. The popular view says it's about getting more land, more money, more stuff. But in this reinterpretation, it's not about real estate at all. It's a plea for a larger sphere of influence, for a bigger mission, for more responsibility. It's not about getting more personal property, it's about being able to fully use your God-given talents for a purpose.
This really brings it all into focus. Imagine you're on the margins of society, maybe an immigrant facing language barriers, or someone facing cultural ceilings that hold you back. For that person, this prayer isn't about getting rich. It's a desperate plea to break through the limitations that are keeping you from contributing everything you have to offer. It's a prayer for the chance to fulfill your potential.
Okay, so let's tie this all together. What this reinterpretation does is it completely reframes the prayer. It's no longer a request for personal gain. It's a bold prayer for purpose. The logic gets flipped on its head. It works like this. First, you ask for a bigger mission, a larger area where you can have an impact. Then, in response, you ask for God's hand to be with you, to give you the strength, the resources, and the protection you're going to need for that bigger mission. And that is what ultimately keeps you from the harm and pain that comes from a life without meaning. It all boils down to this idea, that maybe the point of life isn't to just collect a bunch of blessings for ourselves, but to actually live out the mission we've been given. And so, the prayer we should be offering is the one that equips us for that job.
And so that really leaves us with one final thought. When we take a hard look at our own prayers, what are we really asking for? Are we hoping for a bigger box filled with unused blessings? Or are we asking for the courage, the opportunity, and the strength to take on a bigger mission?